Welcome to the Accessing the Georgia Milestones Resources and Strategies for Math Constructed Responses, Extended Responses. This is the first session of the third grade series. I am Sawanda Coffey, the math mentor here at West Georgia RESA. The purpose of these series of webinars is to provide new and veteran teachers with another resource that will preview for some and review for others examples of constructed response or extended response assessment items that will be structured in the same manner as the Georgia Milestones. Due to the time frame of the webinar, we will only be able to review about 1 to 2 questions each session. The series will be conducted each month for grades 3 through 10. So, if you know other teachers in your building, friends, or family members that are teaching those grades, please have them to join us. The format for each webinar will be the same each month. There will be a standard or standards for the month, a lesson essential question, the standards for mathematical practice related to the assessment item, the assessment item itself, and then we'll look at some scored student work. First, before we get started, let's talk about some norms. You will be muted during the presentation. You will be muted due to the fact we want to decrease the amount of feedback that will come through during the presentation. Secondly, you may type in questions during the presentation. Due to the webinar only being about 30 minutes, we can address questions as we go through, but if not, questions will be consolidated and answers provided via email. Lastly, at the end of each of the presentations, there will be a link to the recording uploaded to the West Georgia RESA site. So anytime that you are not able to join us or any month that you're not able to join us, you can always go back and link up to the recording on the West Georgia RESA website. Before we go any further in the webinar, it would be an appropriate time to define some vocabulary that will be used throughout the series. A quick review of the 3 types of assessment items or questions that will be on the Georgia Milestones are the selected response, which most of us know as the multiple choice. That will be for all content areas. Constructed response, which will be for ELA and mathematics. And extended response. Per the February 2014 Georgia DOE presentation on the Georgia Milestones, constructed response is a general term for assessment items that require the student to generate a response as opposed to selecting a response. Extended response items require more elaborate answers and explanations of reasoning. They allow for multiple correct answers and or varying methods for arriving at the correct answer. Writing prompts and performance tasks are examples of extended response items. Those writing prompts can be created through the teacher. Those performance tasks are already located in the Georgia frameworks. Melissa Fincher, the Associate Superintendent for Assessment and Accountability, stated in a recent conference that I attended that the goal is to guide the students into understanding the process that it takes to answer these constructed response or extended response questions. Then they should be able to take that reasoning and be able to articulate that in their writing in the response of their answer. After they've been able to, or the teacher's been able to guide them through the process of how or what they need to answer the question, then they need to be guided into actually being able to answer the question itself. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Our standard of the month and our lesson essential question. Our standard is going to be coming from OA.8. That standard says to solve 2-step word problems using the 4 operations. Represent these problems using equations with a letter standing for the unknown quantity. Assess the reasonableness of answers using mental computation and estimation strategies including rounding. The highlighted red portion of this particular standard is what's going to be addressed in the assessment item that we review for today. Our lesson essential question: how do we solve real-world word problems using the four operations? In the planning process, teachers should plan to demonstrate the behaviors for addressing the standards for mathematical practice and include questions to ask students to help facilitate that standard. What I will do right now is I will go through the standards for mathematical practice that are aligned to the assessment item that we will review for today. Standard 1 is make sense of problems and persevere in solving them. Some teacher behaviors that are related to this standard is the teacher should be providing those rich problems aligned to the standards. They should also be providing appropriate time for students to engage in the productive struggle of problem solving. That means it is okay as a teacher to allow the student to struggle through a problem, to persevere. Some questions that may help you address this particular teacher behavior is: how is blank's way of solving the problem like or different from yours? Does your plan make sense? Why or why not? What tools or manipulatives might help you? Some student behaviors, because we have some teacher behaviors, but we should also have some student behaviors that we are addressing as well that we want to see demonstrated in our classrooms. Reading the problem carefully, checking answers and making sure solutions are reasonable and make sense, discussing the meaning of the problem with classmates. These are good student behaviors to make sure that this particular standard is being addressed. We want to always make sure that we are demonstrating this standard inside of our classroom. The next standard for mathematical practice that is addressed in this assessment item is Standard 2, reason abstractly and quantitatively. Some teacher behaviors that are aligned to this standard is providing a variety of problems in different contexts that allow students to arrive at a solution in different ways. That means giving the students the opportunity to have different ways to answer the same type of question, or giving them different questions related to the same context, but then they have multiple ways of getting to the answer. Using think aloud strategies as they model problem solving. That means as a teacher, let the students know what your thought process is as you go through answering the question yourself. And we're going to see some of that demonstrated, or we're going to try to demonstrate that in the assessment item that we look at. Some teacher questioning. What does the number blank represent in the problem? How can you represent the problem with symbols and numbers? I think it's a very good strategy to use in your classroom is to encourage students to take the words and create symbols for them, write number sentences, relate things from previous topics to this topic. Some student behaviors that are related to this standard 2 is taking quantities out of context to work with them, which we consider as decontextualizing, or putting quantities back in context to see if that makes sense, which is contextualizing. So when you decontextualize, you say if you had a word problem, you're able to break that word problem into pieces to better understand it. You'll take those words and transfer them into symbols and numbers. And then also, if you are able to break it down, then going back and using that answer to make sense of the problem from the beginning. Standard 4, model with mathematics. Some teacher behaviors that are aligned to this standard for mathematical practice is providing opportunities for students to solve problems in real life contexts. Identifying problem solving contexts connected to student interests. You may have groups of students that are interested in sports, that are interested in history, that are interested in health. So being able to bring those types of questions into your classroom will increase your student engagement. It will also increase the students' just academic achievement overall. Some questions that you may ask that address or help you to address this standard of model with mathematics is, can you write a number sentence to describe the situation? Or what connections do you see? Do you see something that we may have previously covered in a previous unit that's related to this unit, or maybe in a previous grade that we're now seeing again? Student behaviors: using appropriate tools such as objects, drawings, and tables to create mathematical models. Once again, just saw this a couple of standards ago, is having the students to be able to take a word problem or some type of question and be able to, create drawings and tables that will help them to answer the question. The next standards for mathematical practice being addressed today is Standard 5, use appropriate tools strategically. Some teacher behavior is making a variety of tools readily accessible for students and allowing them to select appropriate tools for themselves. When I was in the classroom, one thing that I used to do is I would create a resource table that may be located in the back of my room, but I would also create maybe student bins. I would go and buy those little bins from the dollar store, and I would fill them with color pencils and markers and erasers and graph paper, calculators, just any of the tools I think we would need throughout the year. Some questions that may help you is, how could you use manipulatives or in drawing to show your thinking? That was another thing I would also put in the student bins, or manipulatives, especially at the beginning of the year when it was time to combine like terms, add and subtract positive and negative numbers. So those things to have on, or if you have those on hand, then that will add to the engagement of the students. What other resources could help you solve this problem? If the students could actually tell you, okay, I need this to help me solve this. I need a calculator, I need a ruler, I need a protractor, or I need graph paper to help me, then that will help you in helping them to better understand what it is that the problem is asking them to do. Student behaviors: using technological tools to explore and deepen understanding of concepts. Hey, some kids are good at using those graphing calculators, or if they are used to just using the internet to go and research a topic to better understand, then give them that opportunity to do so. The last standard for mathematical practice that is going to be addressed is number 6, attend to precision. Some teacher behaviors related to that is explicitly teaching mathematics vocabulary, requiring students to answer problems with complete sentences, including units. This first teacher behavior is extremely important to explicitly teach the mathematics vocabulary before. You can do it as a mini lesson. You can always use it as a closing, but explicitly teaching mathematics vocabulary and then requiring the students to answer any type of constructed response or extended response item in complete sentences, including the units. Some question is, what does the word blank mean? Explain what you did to solve the problem. Once again, this should be expressed in complete sentences. Student behaviors that we want to see that's related to this standard is communicating precisely, using clear language and accurate mathematics vocabulary. Once again, encouraging the students to always use that vocabulary that you have taught them to express their thoughts while they answer a particular assessment item. The Georgia DOE grade level overview documents provides a problem-solving rubric for grades 3 through 5 that address the standards for mathematical practice. One thing that we really always want to keep in front of us is that standards number 1 and 6 should be evident in every single lesson that we do. There's a document containing the teacher behaviors, teacher questioning, and student behaviors on the internet. If you attended the summer academies this summer, then you were presented with one of these. Each month, I will try to highlight a different behavior that will assist in addressing the constructive response assessment item of the month. Okay, now it's time to look at a constructive response assessment item. The first one is each cake was cut into 6 slices. Each slice was sold for $5. What was the total amount earned for the sale of all the cakes? And it asks to show their work. Each month, I will be promoting a recommended resource from the state. This month's assessment item is from Engage New York. The link to the website will be provided at the end of the presentation. Take a minute to answer the question. Remember, we want to teach the students how to think through the process of solving this question. Let's practice using the standards for mathematical practice while we answer this question. If you would like to share your thoughts, please do so by typing in your responses. Okay. Before we actually go to the answers and the student work, let's look at some strategies to address the problem. I have provided a problem-solving framework that was presented by Robert Kaplinsky at a workshop he recently conducted. The problem-solving framework is, or the questions that are on the problem-solving framework is, what problem are you trying to figure out? That should be the first thing that the student addresses when they first read any type of assessment item or question. What guesses do they have? During the particular workshop, how he addressed this question is, if you figure out the question and what you want to do to encourage everybody in the room or each student to participate is you just want to take guesses. Nothing is wrong. Everybody at this point in time can participate. So you start out by taking an answer to the question, whatever if the question or the answer may be, whomever the student may be first. Then what you want to do is you want to start encouraging other students to give their answers to a value that's lower than the initial value. So for instance, say the first answer that came out from a student was 50. Then you want to poll the rest of the students and say, okay, well, what student has a guess that's lower than 50? And you want to continue this process until you have the absolute lowest value. Now you want to do the same thing for the students that may have a value that's higher than 50. So one student said, okay, the lowest amount at this time is 20. And the student, after you've polled everybody, says, oh, okay, who has a value higher than 50? And the highest ends up being 100. So what you want to do at this time is say, okay, our answer is going to be between 20 and 50. So at this time, you've engaged everybody in the conversation. At this time, nobody is wrong. So we're still holding on. Next, what do you already know from the problem? This is specific things that are being picked out from the problem itself. Things that you can go back to, you can read through, and you can pick these things out. The next is, what do you need to know to solve the problem? That's where some of your SMPs will come into play, is thinking about what is it that I could use to help me solve this problem. Like I said, it could be a ruler. It could be a calculator. It could be graph paper. It could be squares. It could be base 10 blocks. Whatever the student decides that this is what I need to help me answer this question. What should we title this problem or lesson? This comes into play where just to keep the student going back and thinking about what is the focus of the question and just give it a name. Provide all of your work while working on the problem. This is that space where you give the students the opportunity to write down any and everything that they know that they could think of that is going to help them answer the question and also to answer the question in this space. And last is, what is your conclusion? How do you reach that conclusion? The last bulleted item is designed for students to write their response in complete sentences. That was another one of those behaviors we saw in the SMPs. This problem-solving framework can be used in all aspects of the classroom, whether you want to use it with whole group, small group, individual, with skill work, with task, and performance tasks. An excellent way to begin to integrate this process is to use it in whole group until the students are comfortable with the problem-solving process. Now, if you are already using a problem-solving strategy that has been effective for you, please forward it to me so I can share it with others. The state of New York uses this 2-point scoring rubric to score the short answer questions. New York uses 3-point scoring rubric to score the extended response items. Now, recently I looked at a webinar from the DOE, and they were using a different type of rubric that has a different type of scale. It's not necessarily a point scale, but it may be on extended, proficient, and on those different levels. But you just find a good rubric that you can use to help score your constructed responses or extended responses. Take a moment to look over the rubric as I go through it. This 2-point rubric says the response includes the correct solution to the question and demonstrates a thorough understanding of the mathematical concepts and or procedures in the task. This response, it indicates that the student has completed the task correctly, uses mathematically sound procedures, contains sufficient work to demonstrate a thorough understanding of the mathematical concepts and or procedures, and may contain inconsequential errors that do not distract from the correct solution and the demonstration of a thorough understanding. Now, if you score 1 point, or if a student scores a 1 point on their constructed response question, then that response demonstrates only a partial understanding of the mathematical concepts and or procedures in the task. It's saying that this response correctly addresses only some elements of the task, may contain an incorrect solution, but applies a mathematically appropriate process, and may contain the correct solution, but required work is incomplete. And the last of the rubric is a 0-point response is incorrect, irrelevant, incoherent, or contains a correct solution obtained using an obviously incorrect procedure. Although some elements may contain correct mathematical procedures, holistically, they are not sufficient to demonstrate even a limited understanding of the mathematical concepts embodied in the task. That means the student holistically did not give a clear indication that they knew the material. Okay, let's look at some scored student work. Hopefully you got the correct answer and you can match your answers up against what these students have done. So once again, the question is, each cake was cut into 6 slices. Each slice was sold for $5. What was the total amount earned for the sale of all the cakes? We can see with this student, they score a 2 out of 2 points. And it says the feedback that was given was this response answers the question correctly and demonstrates a thorough understanding of the mathematical concepts. This response identifies that each cake earned $30, which is the 5 times 6 equals 30, and the total revenue of 3 cakes sold for $90. So from looking just at the student's work, the student took the 6 for just one of the cakes and times 3 because he or she had 3 cakes. That gave you 18 slices. Then you took the 18 slices and multiplied times the value of each one of the slices, which was $5, and that gave you 90. Now, if we want to go back to some of the SMPs, the one additional feedback that I would add is, of course, about the units. We're talking about the actual value or the amount earned. So, of course, our units would be dollars, and I would just add that feedback to this student if I had to provide feedback. The next student scored a 1 out of 2 points. And the feedback that was given to this student is this response demonstrates partial understanding of the mathematical concepts embodied in this task by correctly determining that each cake would generate $30 in revenue, which is 6 times $5 equals $30. However, the total amount earned for the sale of all the cakes was not calculated. So this student did not go one step further and find out how much it would be for all 3 cakes. They just found out how much it would be for just 1 cake. Does anybody have any statements or any feedback that they would maybe share with this student? And also what standards for mathematical practice could have been or was demonstrated during this student's answer. Okay, this student scored a 0 out of 2 points. You can see that what they wanted to do, they wanted to create a visual for themselves by trying to break the cake up into 6 pieces. And they got the 6, 6, and the 6, gave them 18, but the response is incorrect. This response incorrectly adds slices to equal dollars, which we know that that is not possible. Feedback. This is very important. It's always important to provide the student with feedback. That feedback can be written or verbal, but it must be given frequently. Students always want to know how they are doing. As with evaluations, teachers want to know how they are doing and how they can do better. Students deserve the same right to know how they are progressing on a standard. The feedback must be provided to tell the student their next steps in moving towards mastering the standard. And the feedback must also use the language of the standards when providing that feedback to the student. All right, this is the closing of our presentation. This slide provides some recommended resources for you to reference. There will be more resources coming. I wanted to introduce one resource at a time to allow teachers time to explore the resource and not be overwhelmed by so much information. So once again, our resource of the month is from Engage New York. Additional resources that you may or may not see throughout this series is the Shell Mathematics Assessment Project and, of course, the Georgia Frameworks. Those are out there for you to review. Do we have any questions? All right. Thank you for joining this session. I'll see you next month.